How's it going, guys, and welcome back to another video. If you're new here, my name's Chase and I make Pokemon videos with way too many tangents. Because as my dad likes to say, I've got a screw backed out about a quarter of a turn. He's from Mississippi. But you know, when it comes to the Pokemon community, there is a vast amount of diversity among the way that people view the franchise and play the games. By the way, that word community used in this kind of context has always struck me as kind of odd, not because it's a bad thing, but just because my brain has a very strange and very literal relationship with words. Like there's the Pokemon community, the Minecraft community, the autistic community, the ADHD community. I had one more, but I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, the ADHD community. I already said that one, didn't I? And I know that it refers to a collective group of people or fan base or dedicated to a common interest, cause, or characteristic, but every time I hear the word community, my brain conjures up an image of an actual, literal community. Like a city dedicated to Pokemon. And I think, hey, when can I move in? Because a lot of other real-world communities stink. Especially the gas station sushi community. Anyway, today we're going to take a look at the different types of Pokemon players that fall under the gigantic umbrella that encompasses all Pokemon fans. Because just like there are different Pokemon types, I think there are different types of Pokemon players. So if you're wondering which one you might be, this is the video for you. And before we get going, just a disclaimer, this video is by no means meant to be comprehensive or to categorize or pigeonhole you, me, or anyone else into one of these specific playstyles as if everybody only plays these games in one specific way, because we don't. So as we go through these in this video and the next, you might be like me and identifying with several of them, or maybe none of them. In which case, I'm actually not sure why you're watching this video because this is a Pokemon channel. If you're lost, the Shuffleboard Society's over that way. I'm over here. So I want to be clear that this video, like really any of my videos, is really just meant to be a fun way to stimulate your thinking about the series and hopefully spark discussion amongst the sweaty and lethargic basement dwellers community. I mean, the Pokemon community. Let's get started with our first type of Pokemon player, the casual. Chances are that if you're watching this video or subscribe to the channel, you're probably not what most of us would consider a casual player, which I would roughly define as someone who has a surface level understanding of the Pokemon series and has maybe played a couple of the mainline games, but never in a dedicated or serious manner. Casuals are the kind of people who may have only watched the anime as kids, or maybe still do, or may have sunk a few hours into spin-off titles like Pokemon Snap, Pokemon Pinball, Pokemon Go, Pokemon Quest, Pokemon Sleep, or Pokemon Corporate Office Job Simulator.
Hi guys, it's so great to see all your smiling faces on this Monday morning. The purpose of this meeting is really just to dedicate a few minutes to meaningless and obligatory social pleasantries. After that, I'm going to talk to you all for an hour and 15 minutes in a subtly condescending and superior tone that communicates how much better I am than all of you without explicitly saying it. Because my entire identity is wrapped up in how successful I'm perceived to be, not to be confused with the success of the organization or actually making a positive difference in the lives of other people. Does that make sense?
Or if they've actually played any of the core series games, it was probably just a few of the most popular titles to complete the main story, while ignoring dex completion, the post-game, and definitely transferring any Pokemon to bank or home to curate any kind of collection. Yeah, the more I've talked to what you might call average or normal people about Pokemon in person, the more I realize that most people, even if they like Pokemon, aren't quite as obsessive as some of us. Especially when it comes to collecting or maintaining a comprehensive knowledge of types, stats, moves, lore, and the countless other kinds of details the series has available for our brains to absorb. Or my brain, at least. And by the way, that is not a bad thing. While I will admit that there's an inner part of my being that does feel a little bit irked when someone mispronounces a Pokemon name.
Oh my gosh, I love Skeledeer J.
Or demonstrates that their knowledge of the franchise goes no deeper than recognizing that Pikachu, Charizard, and Gengar exist. I do my best not to get all sanctimonious about it, because that's annoying, and Lord knows that even as a lifelong fan, I still have a lot to learn. Thankfully, I have my wife standing by to cut me off when I start in on one of my tangents, as she likes to call them. One problem I do see among Pokemon fans, and I think this is probably true of any kind of fandom, is gatekeeping to determine who's a true fan and who's not.
So that's against the rules, and you can't sit with us.
So when I get the urge to correct someone or to info dump about the entire history of one particular Pokemon, I try to restrain myself. Well, most of the time. So as another disclaimer, I don't view the term casual as a pejorative by any means. Honestly, I think it's great and something that makes Pokemon special, kind of like we covered in the last two videos. Pokemon, generally speaking, is as accessible or as deep as someone wants to make it, and that's a beautiful thing. As a matter of fact, my wife falls into this category. For the better part of 10 years, I begged her to get into Pokemon, and for most of that time, she was not having it. It's only been in the last few months that she dipped a toe into playing Go, and now Pokopia, and now she's hooked. So if you're a surface level player, that's totally cool, but we'll be here waiting when you're ready to dive into the chaotic maelstrom that is the deep end of Pokemon obsession, and the water is fine.
It's a trap!
If there was an equal but opposite to the casual player, it might be what I would call the completionist. Now again, there are so many different ways to play the Pokemon games, and there's a lot more to it than just these different types that I put together. And really, any of the other types of players coming up in this video or the next video could probably be considered hardcore or the exact inverse of casual. But in my mind, a Pokemon fan with a completionist mindset, if there was such a thing as a Pokemon player spectrum, would be at one end with the casual on the other end. Whereas a casual player might have completed a few playthroughs and probably skipped a couple of generations and doesn't care to know more about the series than the names of its growing list of mascots, the completionist takes things to a much higher and far deeper level. If I had to pick one of these types that I personally fall into, it would probably be this one, because hopelessly addicted, foaming at the mouth Pokemaniac isn't on the list. Anyway, when it comes to completionism, Pokemon is like an entire universe that's just waiting to suck you in. Because if collecting, finishing every last piece of content a game offers, and neurotically checking things off your self-imposed must-do list is what you're into, like me, then this series has a place for you. Well, actually several places. Think about it, if completing stuff is your thing, Pokemon has so many different ways you could go about it. First of all, there are all the generations, currently 9 in total with Gen 10 coming next year. And then all the games within those generations. So to say, for example, that you've played Gen 1 is one thing, and it would require playing at least one of Red, Blue, or Yellow, for Western audiences anyway. But to say you've completed Gen 1 is another story entirely. That would mean playing and completing all 3 games. Right? Wrong. The definition of completion is obviously subjective and could mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people in this context. But if you're like me and push things to their logical extreme, which now that I think about it isn't all that logical in the first place, then completion could mean not only completing Red, Blue, and Yellow, but completing the decks for one of or all 3 games. But with Pokemon games having that tricky little concept called version exclusives, doing so would require playing at least 2 of them all the way through and then going back and catching everything. And I mean everything, including highly irritating Safari Zone exclusives like Chansey. And then trading with yourself or others if you want to nab that highly sought after Pokedex completion diploma. Well, maybe not all that sought after, but more sought after than a liberal arts degree, I can tell you that. Wasted all that time and money I won't get back for no freaking reason at all. Got scammed like a sucker buying a Magikarp on Route 4. And what do I have to show for it? Nothing. Sorry about that. But this is really just one way of looking at completing Gen 1. There's also what's called a living dex, or collecting one of every single Pokemon species and their unique iterations, including gender differences, alternate forms, shinies, and the like, which is certainly possible but requires a massive amount of motivation, persistence, and dedication. None of which I have for much of anything other than Pokemon, if I'm totally honest. Or you might consider completion for Gen 1 as having used every single Pokemon during a playthrough, which some people do, and it's totally awesome, by the way. Or having one of the original 150 with the Game Boy origin mark, which I've recently undertaken, by the way, and boy howdy is it a lot of work. Or it could even be something really crazy like Gen 1 shiny hunting, which yes, is a thing. This is technically possible by transferring Gen 1 Pokemon to Gen 2 and praying to Arceus that their IVs, which determine whether or not they can be shiny, are configured in your favor. Or, and I think this is the biggest point about this, is that your idea of true completion might be something that's totally subjective and personal personal only to you. Like having a comprehensive knowledge of a certain aspect of the games, like which Pokemon all the gym leaders use, or the encounters for each route and what their odds are. There is so much more that we could get into on this subject, but hopefully this gives you an idea of just how deep this idea of completion goes when it comes to Pokemon. And for me, this very well could be the one thing about this series that scratches that itch in my divergent brain the most. The ways to consider a game or a generation to be complete are practically endless. And you know what that means. Endless ways to create my own sense of order and accomplishment in a world defined by chaos and nihilistic angst. Next up at number 3, we've got what I would call the competitive contender. I'll be the first to admit that I absolutely suck at competitive. And I don't know if it's because I'm just not that competitive of a person, or if the constantly shifting meta just overwhelms my brain, or a little bit of both. But I've never really gotten into the VGC scene. With its massive lists of tiers, builds, movesets, held items, stat distributions, type matchups, and more, it's just too much for me. Or at least at this point in time. Maybe I'll muster up the courage and mental energy to dive in one day, I don't know. Man, if I had a nickel for every time I said that about something. But for some folks, competitive is their thing. And I'd be lying if I said I wasn't just a little bit jealous. It's kind of the same with my relationship with the TCG. If I had the time, money, and brain space, you better believe I'd be hitting it harder than your average American hits the McDonald's drive-thru.
Welcome to McDonald's, where everything on the menu is gonna give you heartburn that's ba-da-ba-ba bad. What can I get you today?
Yeah, I'll take one of everything on the menu.
Excuse me, did you say one of everything?
Maybe I didn't make myself clear. But time, money, and mental capacity are 3 things that unfortunately I don't really have a whole lot of these days. Maybe one day. Please subscribe. But for now, it's getting into Pokemon time when I can. Anyway, needless to say, competitive Pokemon is huge. And it's kind of funny how many people don't recognize that. When I describe Pokemon to people who are unfamiliar, they're usually surprised to learn that there's such a thing as official tournaments, much less that they're as organized and involved as they are. There are Pokemon players who have basically dedicated their lives to the competitive format, and these people are legit, spending who knows how much time studying the viability of every Pokemon based on their stats, abilities, moves, how much their natural capabilities are enhanced by the right held item, whether single or double battles are the right fit, and on and on and on. And this isn't even getting into things changing every season and every generation, with the list of usable and unusable Pokemon being updated all the time. Not to mention the implications of battle mechanics like Mega Evolution, Dynamax, and Gigantamax, or Terastallization. And not that long ago, Power Ranger dances to unlock the maximum power of Pokemon's attacks. Z moves. But yeah, like I've said recently, Pokemon is incredibly complicated, basically being its own universe of complexity, with competitive battles really being a universe within that universe. It's kinda like the simulation that we're all living in right now. I'm kidding. I hope. So while competitive isn't my thing, and to be totally honest, I haven't even touched champions yet just due to the intimidation and fear factor.
Hey, Joe Rogan, is it almost lunchtime? Because I smell somebody cooking.
I do have a lot of respect for those brave enough to enter the fray. Maybe someday I'll give it a shot, but for now, I'm remaining in hiding. Side note for a quick story, so when Scarlet and Violet came out, I went to a launch event at GameStop, and they had a little tournament thing going on, and they brought in this gal who was like a gym leader with some Pokemon fan organization nearby. She wiped my entire team with a Moxie Crocodile. It was humiliating. So if y'all have any suggestions on how to get started with competitive, namely the fear and overwhelm and terror, let me know. There is so much more that could be said about just these 3 so far, but for the sake of time, I'll leave it at this for now. But be sure to stick around for 3 more types of Pokemon players coming up in the part 2 video coming soon. In the meantime, what do you think? Do you relate to any of these playstyles? Do you consider yourself more of a casual player, a completionist, a competitive player, or some combination of those 3? I'm actually not sure how someone could be a casual player and a completionist or a competitive battler, but hey, who am I to say? Again, with Pokemon, there is so much variation with how people can play and how they like to play, and that's a good thing. At the end of the day, the way that you enjoy the franchise isn't going to be exactly the same as the next person. It's really what makes it so much fun, and it gives us a ton of potential to learn from each other. While my skills at competitive might be well, pitiful, you might be really good at it. Or where I might be more familiar with how to complete the decks in a certain generation, you might not be as well versed. So let me know, what kind of player are you? What's one area of the games that you're particularly good at, and maybe one area of the games that you're not so good at? What's an aspect of the games that you'd like to learn more about or discuss with other fans? Feel free to drop a comment and get the discussion going. Okay, before we wrap up, I did want to mention how grateful I am to be headed towards the next milestone of 1,000 subscribers. To be completely honest, I had no idea that my neurodivergent ramblings would be this well received, and I'm really excited to not only continue making videos, but hopefully build a community that's centered on a mutual love for Pokemon and encouragement to be your authentic self. A while back, we actually already unlocked the Supers, Shop, Hype, and channel membership features, and I could not be more appreciative of your support. I'm putting some thought into how we might implement this, and I plan to send out a survey at some point in the near future, so keep your eyes peeled on the community tab for a post coming hopefully pretty soon. I want to make sure that things like this, whether it's a channel membership option or something else, is built from the ground up with your input top of mind, so that this isn't just a channel, but a space for Pokemon fans to hang out, virtually, of course. So if you have any preliminary thoughts, feel free to let me know about that too. With that, thanks again guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Freaking automatic cat litter box. Spinning the turds. Cat turds.